Hello everyone, it's Theme Park Avenue, I'm Eric. Cedar Point is one of the best roller coaster lineups in the world, and today I am ranking all the roller coasters there by their smoothness. Before we begin the ranking, I hope you will consider subscribing to the channel so you know when new rankings and other stuff comes out. I have a lot more content on the way. Now a few ground rules. First of all, roughness is subjective, and I think most of the rides here are actually very smooth, and I'll make note of that. Some have different tolerance than others on rides, and I do want to note that it is entirely based on just my experiences. I'll also point out I am including Thrill Dragster, but I'm not going to include Wicked Twister, which is now permanently gone, or Mean Streak, though I considered that one because it'd be interesting to see where it ranked. But without further ado, let's get to the ranking. From the roughest, number 16 is Blue Streak. Not Corkscrew, I know, some of you are probably surprised. Well, while I do think Blue Streak is the better ride, keep in mind, rough does not mean bad. I do think Blue Streak is rougher than Corkscrew. It just is very, very janky the whole way through. That is mostly due to its age, so of course there's a fair reason for it to be like that, but it still is a thing that exists. And that roughness is definitely a major part of the ride, and it's why I honestly consider Blue Streak to be the scariest ride at Cedar Point. It's just very bumpy. Number 15 is Corkscrew. My most recent rides, while I do think there was some headbanging and it was a bit janky, it's just not the roughest ride. There are jolts here and there, but I thought there were some pretty smooth portions of it, and I guess it can depend on how you sit, but it just was way underrated in my opinion. It's not a bad ride per se. I'd say kind of below average because that bumpiness is still somewhat a factor, but it's not nearly as rough as I've heard from some others. Number 14 is Rougarou. This one's been called Rougarou, and yeah, I can totally get behind that statement. Rougarou's second half is probably just as rough as Corkscrew. The first half is smooth, and that's where I have to rank Rougarou higher. But I think that second half gets quite bumpy. It's not super enjoyable, and that roughness is just a lot more prominent than all the other rides that are above it. Number 13, hear me out, Magnum XL-200. I still like this ride a lot. It ranks way higher than 13 on my ranking of the rides at Cedar Point. But roughness-wise, there's quite a bit. At the bottom of every camelback, and heck, pretty much every hill on the ride, it's quite janky and it can hurt quite a bit. And even at the top of each Airtime hill, I think the Airtime itself is not as bad as those, but you really do get thrown. I think these moments are not the most painful, but they're pretty close to Rougarou, so I do have to say, Magnum is definitely a fairly rough ride through and through, even if it is definitely a good ride overall. Number 12, Cedar Creek Mine Ride. This one shows its age a little bit, but it's not that rough. There are parts where you'll get thrown around and it can be a bit bumpy sometimes, but I just think maybe because it's the speed of this one, it's more of a family coaster. It's not that bad in terms of roughness, and it's overall actually a pretty smooth ride. Number 11 is Wilderness Run. From this point on, they're all smooth, all of them are. The kiddie coasters I had to kind of put somewhere on here, and I thought kind of closer to the middle but in the bottom area would be good because Wilderness Run is smooth, but it's slow and it's small, so there's not a whole lot of track for there to be roughness on anyway. So it is going to be smooth no matter what, but it doesn't have quite as much of the glossiness of the other ones. Number 10 is Woodstock Express. This gets one spot above Wilderness Run for being a longer ride that has sustained smoothness to it, I guess. I don't know, I didn't really know where to rank these kiddie coasters. They're just kind of here. Not a whole lot to say about them. If you get on them, I think you'll find them smooth, but they're not really one where you're going to think about smoothness that much. Number 9 is Raptor. Raptor is smooth. The parts at the end get a little bumpy, I'll admit that. But I do think overall Raptor is a smooth ride. There's just a little bit to it at the end where it does get a bit janky. And obviously because it is an invert, you have that kind of sensation in your feet and legs where it does kind of hurt a bit because of the intensity of it. However, that's not a knock against the ride and its roughness. It is a smooth ride overall, but that does contribute just a little bit to a lower ranking. Number 8 is Maverick. This launch coaster is smooth pretty much the whole way through. There are parts because of the intensity where you do get thrown around a bit, and it can be a bit painful, but I think very little of that contributes to the roughness, and it's not actually roughness but more just intensity that causes that. Very forceful, but well tracked, definitely a smooth ride, and I think the only reason it ranks a bit lower is because I think others are smoother. Number 7 is Gemini. I'm sure some might think Gemini is rough, but I think there is absolutely no part of it that is rough at all. It is a smooth ride. The whole way through, the slow parts, the fast parts, there's not a single part where you get thrown and hurt, so it definitely earned a higher ranking. It's just that there are 6 others that I think are even smoother. Number 6 is Iron Dragon. Iron Dragon is a weird one because you're a suspended coaster car, right? That's what you're in. So you're not on the track. So that does kind of mean it's very difficult for there to be roughness at all. So you think maybe this should be number 1? I think the way the cars swing around is not remotely painful or rough at all, and that helps. But I won't rank it higher because I just think there are others that, while being right at the track or similar, feel just as smooth, if not smoother, and they pull stronger forces and speeds that make it more impressive how smooth they are. And that's why I think Iron Dragon had to rank at number 6. Number 5 is Thrill Dragster. There is nothing rough about this ride. You go 120 miles per hour and it still feels glossy smooth. And that glossiness definitely contributes to the very high ranking. This is a short ride, and that is kind of why I don't rank it higher. If it were a full layout and it stayed smooth the whole way through, that might give it a higher ranking, but I did still give it a top 5 spot because it is undoubtedly smooth. Number 4 is Millennium Force. There is a lot of intensity on this ride, despite what I hear from many. However, it is smooth the whole way through. There was not one moment where I felt rattled, shaken, anything like that. And the ride is not the newest at Cedar Point. It's 22 years old and it still runs really well. So I have to give it that. And it earned a very high ranking. There just happens to be 3 newer roller coasters that are even smoother than this one. Number 3 is Steel Vengeance. This one is an anomaly. On one hand, it's an RMC. RMCs are perfectly smooth. At least all the hybrids I've done. However, this one does throw you around a lot more than other RMCs, and that's saying quite a bit. So there are moments on some rides you might feel it seems rough even though it's not, just because you get thrown and potentially hurt quite a bit on Steel Vengeance. That said, the RMC tracking is so smooth and so perfect for the smoothness aspects that it had to get a really high ranking. However, there are 2 other rides that I feel are the glossiest of all roller coasters at Cedar Point. Number 2, Valravn. Valravn is just so smooth. And there's no other way I can describe it because there's not a single moment, even with high speeds and drops and inversions and all that. No matter where you're sitting on this ride, it is pretty much as glossy smooth as you can get. And I love that, and it works so well. It's just definitely one that earned a very high spot on this list. And if you have no tolerance for roughness, I think you would be fine riding Valravn. That said, number 1 is Gatekeeper. Gatekeeper is the smoothest. Wing coasters tend to be smooth from what I understand, though I have not done any as of the recording besides Gatekeeper. And maybe that is because you are at the wings, so you're not on the track like others. And I know I sort of docked Iron Dragon for that one earlier, but man, this ride is just the smoothest. There's a lot of intensity on this that no one seems to talk about, but the ride is completely perfect in its transition. There's not a single part where you get thrown from side to side or hurt. It's pretty much as enjoyable as you can get for a roller coaster like this. No roughness, still intensity, smooth, and definitely earning of the number 1 spot. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed this video. Comment your thoughts on the smoothest and roughest roller coasters at Cedar Point down below. Subscribe for more content, I'll see you next time.